And our latest post, I have not seen this myself, but this comes your way per Justin Adams. The top 10 brands in college football. This should be interesting. Let's see what we got here. Now, of course, when you say the top 10 brands in college football, that is certainly up for interpretation of what a brand is. Should have an idea of what that is. But that could be taken in a number of directions. So, according to Justin, Alabama's number 1. Ohio State is number 2. Texas, 3. Michigan is 4. Notre Dame, 5. Oklahoma, 6. Georgia, 7. Oregon, LSU, and USC. How do we feel about that? Would love to see your comments on that one. So please give me a call. So while we are waiting to talk more SEC football media days, yes, please just let me know what you think about this list. These are the top 10 brands in college football. I think it's a pretty darn good list. Sure, I could debate it. I could offer up some suggestions of other programs that could be in the top 10. Who else could be in the top 10? Penn State, maybe. Clemson, maybe. Possibly Tennessee, possibly Nebraska, possibly. That's about as far as that list can go. As far as I'm concerned, I can't think of anybody else that would really have that much of an argument of placing in the top 10 in the sport in terms of brand. I think that's a pretty tight top 10. And whether Georgia's 4, Georgia's 7, or 3, or 9, I think this is a combination of historic brand power and current brand power is what it appears to be. And all of those brands are historic brands outside of Oregon, which is not. Oregon is certainly a newcomer to the field of having any type of influence in college football. It's really in the last 10 or 15 years. But that is, I got to praise that list. Again, you could argue Ohio State number 1. You could argue Michigan number 1. You could argue Notre Dame number 1. Those are the 3 other brands that I would argue number 1. I'm sure some Texas fans would argue that they are number 1, but they just have not been any good for so long. And I think that has tarnished their brand. And I think that has tarnished their popularity and their relevance. Because up until last season, I think a lot of college football nation has lost interest in Texas football because they just have not been any good for so long that they had become Nebraska. And so they've had one big season. Let's see if they can continue that. It's a credit to Notre Dame in a sense that they can rank that high despite not being an elite football team on the field since when? It could be argued that the last time Notre Dame was elite was 1993-94. Some people would argue 2015, 2018, that those teams were elite. 2012, they went to the BCS championship game. But when you were clearly trampled and nowhere close to being competitive in those games, and you backdoored your way into those games in a sense, I don't think that is elite. And I also don't think elite is a one-year component. I believe you have to show some staying power. So to me, Notre Dame has not been elite since 1993-94. But I do not in any way have an issue with him being number 5 in the sport. Alabama's elite now. Ohio State, Texas, Michigan. Well, Texas, I think, needs to prove it. Are elite now. Oklahoma's fallen off of elite, but they're still close, and they've been elite very recently. Georgia, of course, is probably the best program in the country right now. Oregon's elite. LSU is fringe elite. They're not elite. They've not been elite since 2019, and that was a one-year wonder. LSU has really not been elite on the field consistently since Saban into Miles, late 2000s, 2007, of course, 2011. They played in championship games, and USC is 10 or 12 or 15 years away from being removed from being elite in 2008-9, but the brand is extremely strong. This is an interesting list. It's a good list. Man, I think that one's airtight. My salute to you, Justin. Good job. Matthew Miller stopping by with this one. Texas is the number 1 brand, most college football revenue by a lot. Not based on the metrics I've seen. It's not by a lot. Ohio State, I believe their football program made more money than Texas did last year, or whether that was the year before. Yeah, I don't think it's all about making money. I just don't think. I think this 12 or 13-year lull of Texas football has just worn down the college football nation concerning Texas, and they have to prove that they are an elite program again. And one season doesn't prove it to me. I think that they're going to continue this. I think that they have the right coach, whom I have doubted until last season. And they've got so much in terms of resources. And shoot, that's the bottom line term right there. That covers everything. They've got the resources to propel them into the future to continue to do what they did this past season and be even better. But so Matthew Miller, obviously that's a biased opinion, but it's his opinion and it's got validity to it. It's not a ridiculous statement. There can be an argument that Texas is number 1. I don't believe they're really in the argument right this second, but it's not a ridiculous claim. It's not like saying Kansas State's the number 1 brand in college football. But yeah, I just my experience in observing our conversations on here, who's interested in what, how many people are interested in what teams, and what people are talking about online and so forth, that Texas has just kind of drifted off, that people have gotten sick of all this hype in the offseason, and then 7-5, and then 5-7, and then 7-5, and then 5-7 over and over and over and over and over and over, that there really hasn't been that much attention given to Texas. I don't know that their players have had much attention in the last 12 or 13 years. The average college football fan could name a lot of players off of most of these teams from the last 10, 12, 13 years. They couldn't name many Texas players. I'm talking not like Mr. Hardcore that knows everything, everybody. I'm not talking about fringe fan that knows nobody but 3 players in the nation. I'm talking about like a general, pretty well studied college football fan that spends his day or her day on Saturday watching college football, maybe like some other sports. So gets away from college football a little during the offseason, but is really in tune with college football, that knows, for example, the Alabama quarterback, their running back, their best wide receiver, 3 or 4 defensive players, maybe an offensive lineman, that knows the core of the team and the best players, and that's their general knowledge of team to team among the best teams in the country. there aren't that many players that people have known from Texas in the last 12 or 13 years. There have not been many Bijan Robinsons. So, yeah, to me, Texas is not the number one brand in college football. To me, it's an argument between Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame.